Hello, today I want to go into the difference between the straight handstand and the banana handstand so you can learn to appreciate and understand the two different styles, be aware of some of the subtle details between them, why you might want to train one or the other, what's the difference in relation to other skills that depend on the handstand, pros and cons versus one or the other, specific situations that you may want to use one or the other style, and then of course why you would want to train one style versus the other. So straight handstand versus banana handstand, of course it's not black and white. There's a lot of positions in between them. There's a lot more different ways to perform the handstand, but typically when someone learns their first handstand, it's usually going to fall under one of those two categories. So what is a banana handstand? Because a lot of you may not know. In fact, I was teaching a workshop recently and I got asked this question, and it's always good to kind of redefine what a beginner student might be thinking. So the first question is, what is a banana handstand? And some people may not know. Obviously, if you've been in the handstand game for a long time, you know, but if you're new, you may not realize what this is. It refers to the shape of the handstand, and the banana refers to usually the curve in your back when you do it, right? So banana handstand is one where you see the body do one of these shapes. And then because of that, it typically involves a closed shoulder angle. This is more of what you're gonna see in the old style strongman, old style gymnastics, old style circus, and the reason is that it's a more intuitive shape. I'll go into it later, but if you were to just put your hands on the ground and kick up, probably your shoulders are going to stay at a slightly closed angle where there's just flexibility or comfort, and then the back is going to arch. So again, this is, if you were not taught what a good handstand form should be, the manifestation of your first handstand that you learn is more likely to be banana shaped, because again, it's safer to balance because it's lower to the ground, because the shoulders are not fully open, and because you maintain that natural arch of the back that you probably have when you stand anyway. So that's the banana handstand. It's that curve in the body with the shoulder angle not all the way open but slightly closed to account for that. And then the straight handstand also refers to the shape, but the difference now is that it's in a straight line. So this is a counterintuitive position. This is, our body is not a straight line, right? So it's a position that usually for most people has to be specifically trained using cues that are not very intuitive, cues that you have to specifically focus on to understand within your body. And the main difference is that in the straight handstand, you have an open shoulder angle. So the arms are in line with the torso, and then everything else falls into place. Other than that, the cues that you'll typically see is the chest in, the posterior pelvic tilt. So it's a more closed body handstand with the shoulders very open. Now this is something you'll see in modern day circus and gymnastics, and of course you're seeing it a lot more in kind of the recreational community, because it's handstands are getting more popular and then people want to care more about the technique and focus on it. But even if you look at the history of circus and gymnastics, there was a transfer, right? Everyone used to do banana back handstands, and then eventually they started doing more straight handstands. One of the reasons why is because it's longer. So for example, in gymnastics skills like a giant or tumbling skills, you get more rotational momentum when you have a longer lever. So making the body as long as possible gives more power in these kind of skills. Another reason you're going to start to see it more in gymnastics as the skills are getting harder is because it's easier to transfer force with that position. So when you have a straight body with the joints stacked on top of each other, if you apply downward force, the body can hold it a lot easier, because it's right like stacking bricks one on top of each other. Whereas the banana handstand, you're here, you apply more force because the body is not straight. The joints that are bent are going to take more force. So it's not as ideal for those kind of skills. But again, it is generally more difficult to learn a straight body handstand. It's more difficult to balance a straight body handstand because you have a higher center of gravity, right? And for some people, it's going to be especially difficult because it requires a very high degree of shoulder flexibility. no matter what kind of handstand you're doing, unless it's a contortion handstand, which is a completely different category, you're going to have to put your arms over your head, right? So you have to have some amount of flexibility there. If you can't do that, you probably don't need to be focusing on the handstand in your training. But then there are variations into how much shoulder flexibility you have. So if this is the maximal of someone's overhead shoulder flexibility, you get a little bit closer, then it's going to be very difficult to create a straight body handstand because the shoulders are what set the line. So in this case, someone's probably going to be learning a banana back handstand. Someone who has good shoulder flexibility doesn't necessarily mean they're going to learn the straight handstand from the get-go, but it means they have more potential to be able to learn the straight handstand easier. So that's a really big deciding factor, is the shoulder flexibility and then how much control and confidence you have over that. So the banana handstand is easier to learn for a lot of reasons, and one of them is because there's not really any preparation involved. You already have a natural curve in the back, so you pretty much just kick and go, right? Typically, if you're going to be practicing this one, it would be with the back to the wall. It doesn't really work with the chest to wall, and I'll show you why a little bit later. You're just going to put your hands down, kick, and then something like this is what's probably naturally going to happen. You're going to have your heels on the wall. You still push with the shoulders. The head goes a little bit out, and you just allow that back to have a natural curve, and that would be just, again, a very basic way to practice your banana back handstand. So for the straight handstand, as I mentioned, it's not as intuitive, so you may want to do some preparation drills to understand the body position, because when you're upside down, it makes a lot less sense. Some people pick it up faster than others, as always, but it's usually something that you have to prep for instead of just going for it like the banana handstand. So one drill that I like to use is, lighting's kind of shit right now, but this is the only usable wall in the room. So I'm standing with my back against the wall, and what I'm going to do is flatten my back. And to do that, I'm doing this posterior pelvic tilt. I'm rolling the chest in so there's no space between my back and the wall. Then I extend my arms, and I try to put my arms overhead while maintaining that same back position. Now this is much more difficult than it looks, because it really tests your actual shoulder flexibility, because you don't have the spine to help move the shoulders further back. This is the general position that you want to be in when you do your straight body handstand. So then you're going to go into your chest to wall handstand. You're going to get reasonably close to the wall. And see, banana back doesn't work here, because if I arch, I'm leaning into the wall. But if I do my straight body, the wall can act as a guide for my body, and I can try to create that same shape. But that shape, as I mentioned, it's not intuitive. It's something that you have to generally train to be able to do. Okay, so what are the pros of learning a banana back handstand? First of all, it's easier to learn. Secondly, it's going to be just generally more intuitive. The balance is easier. You'll probably find the position makes more sense to you from the get-go. And if you have trouble with shoulder flexibility, whether you're just inflexible or maybe you have previous injuries or shoulder structure that prevents you from opening all the way, the banana back handstand is still a good way to learn the handstand. And there's nothing wrong with doing it. You'll see on the internet a lot of materials saying that, are you going to hurt your back? And it's wrong because your core is not engaged. Who says your core is not engaged? Just because you have a bit of arch in your back, that doesn't mean you're dumping the force into your back. And you don't see the old school handstanders who did these huge sway backs as their normal handstand, and they still train for hours a day. You don't see them complaining about back problems because they're not dumping the force into your back when they do that. You can control it. It's like anything else. You just have to be aware. So don't think that arched back equals bad by any means. Like I said, there is a way that you can do it, that you can let the lower back completely go and then the force goes into it, but that doesn't mean that's how you do it. You still want to keep that length. You still want to keep the extension. Depending on how much you care about your form, I think the banana handstand can still absolutely look beautiful. It just depends on your own standards. The cons of the banana back handstand is you may not get the same street cred. You may not get the same respect from people because now the standard is the straight handstand. So might get shit from people on the internet who think that the straight handstand is the only way to do it, but who cares? If you don't care, it doesn't matter. You can still get to a very high level of balance with the banana back handstand. I'll talk a little bit more. There are advantages the straight handstand gives you in terms of certain techniques, but like you want to do press handstands, handstand push-up, 90-degree push-ups, one-arm handstand. You want to do all of that, you can still achieve all of that with an arched back handstand. You don't need a straight handstand by any means. So again, it's really up to you what the choice is and how much you care. So the advantage of the straight handstand, it is mechanically more efficient. If you look at it from a pure mechanical standpoint, it's nice because you have the joints stacked on top of each other. You have a longer line, which is visually appealing in a lot of ways because you have this length. The length also allows you to do more advanced skills if you're using the handstand in a dynamic standpoint. Like again, for tumbling, for bars, for swinging work. The technique, you don't need a straight handstand to learn things like press handstand or one arm. However, the technique is a lot more elegant and makes more sense coming from a straight handstand compared to a banana back handstand. It's easier to standardize, it's easier to control, and this is one of the reasons why you see that shift in gymnastics and in circus to the straight handstand. The cons of the straight handstand, it takes more work to learn. It's not intuitive. You might get into that kind of that almost a bodybuilder mindset. Like I'm going to quote this brilliant science guy when he says, the day you start lifting is the day you become forever small, right? It's like as a bodybuilder, you get big, but you have this constant dysmorphia that you're not big enough. So sometimes people get that with the straight handstand where they think, oh, it needs to be straighter. My lower back still has a slight curve in it. And then it's like this never-ending void that you can get into when a lot of the time it depends on the body type of the individual, and a lot of times it's straight enough to do what you need to do with it. So that's kind of one of the negatives. Sometimes there's some elitism with the straight handstand, right? Like you'll see in the Instagram world, but none of that matters. But legitimately, it is a good technique to be able to strive for, but don't think that because you're doing a banana handstand that it's a wrong handstand, that you have to turn it into a straight handstand. Same thing, don't think that because you're learning a handstand for the first time, you must learn to do a straight handstand. Personally, in my practice, I learned originally from the old school strongman because that was the only instruction I had available. So I was doing a banana back handstand because it was natural for me, and I was doing that for years before I learned about the straight handstand. And then it took me another couple of years to apply the cues of the straight handstand to get it to where I want it to be. And I think like anything else, it's about versatility. You learn how to go back and forth between the two, you learn to appreciate them, and you learn to apply different kind of standard of handstand to different situations. And then once you do that, you'll stop looking at things as right versus wrong. You'll understand how this works for the situation, or maybe it doesn't work as well and it could still be modified and improved. Okay, and then which one should you do? I don't know. I can't tell you that. It depends on your goals, it depends on your standards, it depends on your own unique physiology and how that relates to your handstand practice. So generally it's a good goal to have to try to get to the straight handstand, but at the same time, if you're not training as a competitive gymnast or a professional circus artist, don't worry about it too much. Try to keep it in mind, but I would say learn the handstand first. Just learn to do a handstand in a way that's comfortable, in a way that doesn't cause you pain, in a way that you can make it consistent. And you can include as much line work as you want because it can help you in a lot of ways, and you can work on the straight line, but don't let working on the straight line hinder your work on the handstand itself. Right? So, because also there's nothing wrong with learning to do a consistent handstand in a banana shape and then turning that into a straight body later. There's nothing wrong with that. And then you have the control to do both. So basically this, I'll say it as a teacher. So if I were teaching kids gymnastics, if I were teaching somebody who I'm trying to get them to build good habits for the future in a way that we don't have to go back and correct things later on, we're going to do a lot of line drills. We're going to do a lot of work with the straight handstand. Again, if I were training a gymnast or a circus artist or someone who has communicated to me that they're very serious about their form and they want it to look a certain way, then from the beginning, I'm going to be very focused on that, and we're going to spend a lot of time on the line. Now, if someone's just doing it for fun, their goal is just to learn a handstand however they can, I'm still going to include handstand line work. I'm still going to include some work with a straight body, and I'm still going to have that as kind of a general long-term goal, but I'm not going to be picky about it. I'm not going to take it too seriously. The main goal there would be just to do the handstand in whatever way possible safely, and then when we achieve that, then we can add more layers of complexity if the student wants. So just giving you ideas, because I don't coach everyone the same way either. So this has been a bit of a ramble on the straight body handstand versus the banana back handstand. As always, it's not black and white. There are so many ways to do the handstand. None of them are right or wrong. It depends on the situation. It depends on your body type. It depends on the standards you want to play to. So when you see a handstand, appreciate it for what it is. Standing on your hands is hard. And then if you want to add these layers of standard, then you can start to look at all the details of form, of technique, of all of these things. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if there's any topics you'd like me to make some videos on, and I'll see what I can do. But other than that, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff, and have a great day.